In-depth summary of Esther in the NLT Bible version by ChatGPT. The author is unknown, possibly Ezra or Mordecai. Time period is around 483 to 473 BC, during the Persian Empire under King Xerxes. The setting is the royal palace of Susa. The themes are: number 1, God's providence and sovereignty when unseen. Number 2, courage and faith in face of danger. Number 3, reversal of evil and the triumph of righteousness. Number 4, the preservation of God's covenant people. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Esther 4:14. The fall of part 1. The fall of Queen Vashti. Chapter 1. The story begins with a lavish feast in the Persian capital Susa. King Xerxes, known for his pride and power, displays his wealth for 180 days. He displayed the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. Esther 1:4. At the final banquet, he commands his queen, Vashti, to appear before the guests to show off her beauty. She refuses. Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command. This made the king furious. Esther 1:12. In anger and humiliation, Xerxes removes Vashti from her royal position, setting the stage for a new queen to rise. Part 2. Esther becomes queen. To replace Vashti, the king holds a massive banquet contest to find a new queen. Among the women taken to the palace is Hadassah, Esther, a Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, was very beautiful and had a lovely figure. Esther 2:7. Esther wins the favor of the eunuch Haggai and is given special treatment. After a year of preparation, she is presented to the king. The king loved Esther more than it. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head. Esther 2:17. Meanwhile, Mordecai uncovers a plot to assassinate the king. Mordecai had uncovered a plot. He told Queen Esther about it, and she gave Mordecai credit for the report. Esther 2:22. This good deed is recorded in the royal chronicles, though not yet rewarded. Part 3. Haman's rise and hatred. Chapter 3. A man named Haman, an Agagite, is promoted to a high position of authority. The king commands everyone to bow to him, but Mordecai refuses, because he will not worship any man. All the king's officials bowed down before Haman, but Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Esther 3:2. Furious, Haman plots not only to kill Mordecai, but to destroy all the Jews in the empire. He decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews. Esther 3:6. Haman manipulates the king into signing a decree permitting genocide against the Jews. And on the appointed day of the Jews were to be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated. Esther 3:13. Part 4. Mordecai appeals to Esther. When Mordecai learns of the decree, he tears his clothes and mourns in sackcloth. He sends word to Esther, urging her to plead with the king for her people's lives. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. Esther 4:14. At first hesitant because approaching the king uninvited could cause death, Esther courageously agrees. I will go to see the king. If I must die, I must die. Esther 4:16. Part 5. Esther's first banquet. Esther appears before the king and wins his favor. When he saw Queen Esther standing there in the inner court, he welcomed her and held out the gold scepter to her. Esther 5:2. Instead of immediately accusing Haman, she wisely invites the king and Haman to a banquet. There, she invites them again to a second banquet the next day, building suspense and trust. Haman leaves the palace proud, but when he sees Mordecai refusing to bow, his rage boils. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow, he was filled with rage. Esther 5:9. At his wife's suggestion, he builds a 75-foot gallows to hang Mordecai. So he set up a sharpened pole that stood 75 feet tall. Esther 5:14. Part 6. The King's Sleepless Night. In a divine twist, the king can't sleep and asks to hear the royal records, where he discovers Mordecai's unrewarded act of loyalty. What reward or recognition did we ever give Mordecai for this? Esther 6:3. Just as Haman arrives to request Mordecai's execution, the king orders him to honor Mordecai publicly. Quick, take the robes and my horse, and do just as you have said for Mordecai the Jew. Esther 6:10. Haman, humiliated, parades his enemy through the city streets. God's ironic justice is unfolding. Part 7. Esther's second banquet and Haman's downfall. Chapter 7. At the second banquet, Esther reveals her true identity and courageously exposes Haman's plot. This wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy. Esther 7:6. The king, enraged, storms out. When he returns, he sees Haman falling into Esther's couch. He assumes the worst. Then the king said, "Hang Haman on the pole he set up for Mordecai." Esther 7:9. Haman is executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. The ultimate reversal. Part 8. The Jews' Deliverance. Chapters 8 and 9. Esther is given Haman's estate, and Mordecai is promoted to Haman's former position. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Esther 8:2. Since a royal decree cannot be revoked, a new decree allows the Jews to defend themselves. The king's decree gave the Jews in every city authority to unite to defend their lives. 8:11. Esther 8:11. On the appointed day, the Jews triumph over their enemies. No one could make a stand against them, for everyone was afraid of them. Esther 9:2. The Jews celebrate their deliverance with feasting and joy. The Jews were filled with joy and gladness and were honored everywhere. Esther 8:16. The Feast of Purim. Mordecai establishes Purim as an annual festival to commemorate their victory and God's deliverance. Mordecai recorded these events and sent letters to the Jews throughout the provinces, calling on them to celebrate. Esther 9:20-21. The Great Reversal, Chapter 10. The book ends with Mordecai's exaltation and lasting legacy. Mordecai the Jew became the prime minister with authority next to that of King Xerxes himself. Esther 10:3. He was a very great among the Jews, and who held him in high esteem because he continued to work for the good of his people. Esther 10:3. The major themes of this book are: number 1, God's providence, even when unnamed. Though God is never mentioned, his hand is evident in every event, from the king's insomnia to Esther's timing. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just at such a time as this? Esther 4:14. Number 2, courage and faith. Esther's bravery in risking her life for her people demonstrates faith in God's unseen plan. I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. Esther 4:16. Number 3, reversal of evil. The book showcases God's justice. Evil plans collapse and righteous prevails. Haman was hanged on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Esther 7:10. Number 4, identity and calling. Esther learns that her royal position was part of God's divine calling. Each believer, like Esther, is placed for such a time as this in God's plan. Number 5, celebration of deliverance. Purim becomes the lasting symbol of joy, gratitude, and remembrance of God's salvation. They were to celebrate these days annually to remember the time when sorrow was turned into joy. Esther 9:22. In conclusion, the book of Esther reveals that God is always at work, even when he seems silent. Through ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, he brings deliverance and fulfills his promises. Esther reminds us that divine providence often hides behind human events, but God always moving pieces into place for his glory and his people's good. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Esther 4:14.